Okay, Mara, welcome to Missouri's virtual grade level reading conference 2026. Um, Kristen Drudge and with Turn the Page KC and myself, Lisa Graining with Turn the Page STL, are proud chapters of the campaign for grade level reading. And once a year, we get the opportunity to highlight what's going on in Missouri with literacy. So, welcome to Closing Literacy Gaps in Missouri, how unconstrained skills are supporting literacy across Missouri's informal learning environments. Next slide. This is actually, Kristen and I welcome you to the seventh annual Campaign for Grade Level Reading virtual conference, and specifically to our state webinar. We will begin welcoming you like we're doing right now and making sure that our esteemed guests are introduced. Um, on our agenda, we have Dr. Monroe Richardson, who will talk about how constrained and unconstrained skills benefit literacy and their research and data. And then we're going to go on to two phenomenal examples of informal learning institutions here in Missouri with the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art and with the Magic House St. Louis Children's Museum. And then the best part is at the end, we're hoping all of you can share your favorite informal learning places here in Missouri. Next slide. Just a few housekeeping tips. Welcome, everyone, and please, if you would like, introduce yourself in the chat box, your name, what organization you're with, and maybe even what city you are in, whether you're in Missouri or not. You are all just participating in listen-only mode, so if you'd like to communicate with us, the best way is via the chat. Um, uh, and this webinar is being recorded. So for any reason we go over and you have to leave early, we will have the entire recording for you and sent to you. We will also put our resources linked in the chat and in a follow-up email. Most importantly, sit back and enjoy the great teachings here of Dr. Richardson, Miss Macker, Miss Fitzgerald, and Miss Norton. Next slide.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. We are truly honored today to have Dr. Monroe Richardson with us to share his work as the editor and researcher behind Unconstrained Kids, which translates and shares cross-disciplinary academic research on the science of cognitive skill building. Monroe's professional experiences reach across the areas of literacy and reading, urban education, charter schools, teacher recruitment, and strengthening educational and entrepreneurial ecosystems, spanning the metro areas of Charlotte, North Carolina, and Kansas City, Missouri. He is a much loved and respected contributor to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and I will add a former board member for Turn the Page KC. Welcome, Monroe, and we're so happy you have chosen to be here today.
Thank you, Kristen and Lisa, and thanks for the invite to come be with you all this morning. Excited to be with you all here on GLR Week and talking with friends from across the Show Me State. I'm excited to share in the little bit of time we have together about some work, some research that I've been digging deeply into over the last 2 years. And as you can see on the title slide, really want to highlight for everyone the real important opportunity to build children's skills that will support reading and reading comprehension specifically through opportunities and experiences in informal learning environments. So to start off, we're going to show a video, and we're going to do a little bit of switching, and so we're going to bring up a video on YouTube. But to tee this up, in 2005, a University of Michigan professor named Scott Paris published an academic paper about reading skills in a journal called Reading Research Quarterly. And he made the observation that not all reading skills are the same. And he called some of these skills constrained skills and others unconstrained. And this eventually became known as constrained skill theory. Over the next 20 years, other researchers have talked about and built up on this idea. And this is a video is a 2-minute introduction to constrained and unconstrained skills.
Children build two types of skills when they learn to read, write, and think mathematically: constrained and unconstrained skills. Both types of skills are important, but each type develops differently. Constrained skills involve a limited amount of information. Think of the alphabet, numbers, phonics, or division. Everyone works with the same information. Unconstrained skills involve a much broader amount of information. Think about vocabulary, background knowledge, or proportional thinking. Everyone does not have access to the same information. For typically developing children, constrained skills are learned within relatively limited amounts of time. They are mainly learned in formal classroom settings. Unconstrained skills develop more slowly over longer periods of time. They grow from instruction and experiences outside and inside of the classroom. Constrained skills are relatively straightforward to teach and assess. Proficiency is clearly defined. The finish line for mastery is the same for everyone. Unconstrained skills are not as straightforward to teach or assess. There is no single yardstick for mastery. There is no finish line for growth. Developing constrained and unconstrained skills together is important to help children succeed in reading, writing, and mathematics. To learn more about skill type and the science of skill building, go to unconstrainedkids.com.
All right.
Monroe, I'm going
Yes.
to interrupt just for a second. Our chat feature, everyone, is not working. So just please put in your information in the Q&A. And at the end, when we ask questions, you can use the Q&A also. Thank you.
Awesome. So in 2 minutes, we've described constrained skill theory. One helpful way to think about skills and building skills is like a rope. And if you think about a rope, there are many individual fibers that make up a rope. And the more tightly woven the fibers, the stronger the rope. There is no one way to twist the fibers in a rope. And ropes don't weave themselves. It's an active process. When we think about children and youth and weaving skill ropes, they need help weaving skill ropes. This happens in classroom, at home, and in community settings. And as we're going to see, not all skill fibers are the same. Some skills are acquired in school, and typically, and these tend to be the constrained skills. But there are other skill fibers that are acquired both inside and outside of school, at home, and in community settings. And not everyone has the same experiences and opportunity to acquire and weave those skills. And that's particularly where informal learning organizations come into play. Okay, next slide. So you saw sort of the big picture around constrained and unconstrained skills in the video. Here is the list of constrained skills, all of the constrained skills that support reading, writing, and math. And I know that we're all here really concerned about early literacy. Those are the skills in the left-hand column. These are the constrained skills that kids need to learn to be able to read well. Next slide. But then there are also the unconstrained skills. And what I've done here is group together in 4 groups. I would call these sort of core foundational unconstrained skills that are also supporting reading, writing, and math. That first group up in the upper left-hand corner, those are your executive function skills. That really serves as the brain's air traffic control. They're helping to coordinate all of the other skills that children are developing and practicing and refining. That second group of skills to its right is conceptual and world knowledge. We often talk about background knowledge, and that certainly fits here, but it's all of the sort of maps for understanding to make sense of the world around them. The third group of skills are spoken and written language, and many of these skills will be familiar to those of us that are working in early literacy. And then that fourth group is what's called relational reasoning. These are sort of these broader skills that particularly support mathematical thinking. Next slide. So, as you saw in the video, there are two types of skills with two developmental pathways, and success in school and beyond relies upon mastery of both types of skills. But to make this more concrete, we're going to focus on some examples. So, Mara, click for me. So the constrained skills that support reading are really sort of fixed and finite. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, English alphabet, 44 sounds or phonemes in the English language. We combine these in roughly about 240 different ways to represent all of the sounds in the English language. But because not all of the words in English follow the phonics rules, we have to learn about 200 to 300 irregularly spelled words. And then when we can do all of that and read with fluency, up to 150 words correct per minute, we've got sufficient reading fluency to really focus on making sense of what we're reading. In other words, reading comprehension. These are mostly learned in classroom settings. But in contrast, click for me, Maura, are the unconstrained skills. And you saw there were four groups. We're going to pick on just one skill, and that's in that spoken and written language cluster, and this is vocabulary. And just look at the contrast. There are about 170,000 active words in English. We need to learn about 20 to 40,000 to really be proficient in reading. Many words have multiple meanings, so while we have to learn the definition of words, many words have more than one meaning, but it's not enough to know the definition. You need to know how to use a word, and then how context and tone can shift the meaning of words, and how specific words relate to other words. That's a lot more information to learn and manage just for vocabulary alone. And vocabulary is learned both inside and outside of school. In other words, it's both a caught and taught skill. Next slide. So up to this point, I've been talking about skills as either constrained or unconstrained. But in reality, it exists along a continuum of constraint, that you have some skills that are way more constrained and some skills that are way more unconstrained. So even within the dichotomy of constrained and unconstrained skills, you still find skills falling across a continuum or spectrum of constraint. Now, this is, sort of interesting and academic so far, but the real question is, how does this show up when it comes to learning how to read? And many of you, of course, will be familiar with models like the simple view of reading or Scarborough's reading rope. And these models have been around and with us for a long time. But over the last 20 to 25 years, there's been additional reading research, particularly in reading comprehension, and newer models that have come up that really take into account additional aspects of what goes into learning how to read well. And I'm going to just show you a couple of them and how constrained and unconstrained skills apply. Okay, next slide, please. So this first one is called the direct and indirect effects model of reading. This comes from a professor named Youngsuk Grace Kim. She's at the University of California at Irvine and has done really beautiful empirical work understanding various skills and how they relate to each other. What I want you to see here is, one, there are multiple groups of skills. There are sub-skills that I haven't provided all the detail here to make it easier to understand, but you've got multiple skills that are sort of working together, either influencing or being influenced by each other, that are all supporting reading comprehension. The green skills I've color-coded in green, or the constrained skills I've color-coded in green, and the unconstrained skills are color-coded in blue. One thing to note, of course, is that reading comprehension itself is an unconstrained skill, but it's also influenced by a mix of constrained and unconstrained skills. In other words, kids, in order to be able to read well, need to develop both types of skills. But remember, the green skills, the constrained skills, are mainly learned in classroom settings, but those blue skills, the unconstrained skills, are learned in both inside and outside of the classroom. So this is one model. I'm going to show you very quickly another model. Next slide. And this is what's called the active view of reading. And some of you might be familiar with this. This was developed by Nell Duke and Kelly Cartwright, and this is probably the newest model of reading that's out there. I won't go into it too much, but I have indicated both the unconstrained and constrained skills here. The takeaway, kids need to develop both types of skills in order to be skilled readers. Next slide. So we talked about skill ropes, and one of the things that's really important to sort of take away from our time together is that skills are not all or nothing. It's not that kids don't have skills or they do have skills, but that skills really exist on a spectrum. And so if we think about skill ropes, in reality, there are some kids who have skinnier skill ropes and some have thicker, more durable skill ropes. And it's those thicker, more durable skill ropes really are going to be more flexible. They're going to be able to handle more challenges. And when we think about the world that we're in today, how dynamic it is, how AI and other things are changing the world around us, we want our children to have big, thick, durable skill ropes, but those involve strands that are harder to weave, they take more time, and kids need help to weave thick skill ropes. Next slide. So the goal for all of us involved with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading is to have our kids able to read well. And that fundamentally is about comprehension. Comprehension is the ability to process text, to understand its meaning, and to integrate it with what the listener or reader already knows. Now, I said listener or reader because comprehension involves both spoken and written text. All of you right now are doing beautiful listening comprehension, but we also want children to be able to comprehend written text. But comprehension is not all or nothing. And just like you saw those skill ropes of, from skinny to fat, comprehension also is on a spectrum. So at the lowest level, we have what's referred to as beginning comprehension. Sometimes that's called literal comprehension. That's reading on the line. And then we have sort of inferential comprehension. There's comprehension where the clues are explicit, and sometimes when they're implicit, when you have to like fill in the gaps with your own knowledge. That's reading between the lines. But then we also want children to be able to evaluate text. All of us, when we read things in the news or it pops on our phone, we have to evaluate, is this true? Does this make sense? What do I think about this? And so we want children to also be able to read beyond the lines. And then, of course, there are different types of texts. We all have to be able to read and apply our reading comprehension in different kinds of texts. And children who have big, thick skill ropes are able to manage much more diverse types of reading than children with skinnier skill ropes when it comes to reading comprehension. If we think about the MAP test, and we think about the children in Missouri from third grade to eighth grade, I believe, that are taking the MAP test, if you are reading at simply beginning comprehension level, you're roughly going to be at that not proficient level. In order to get to the basic level on the Missouri MAP test, you have to at least get to explicit inferential comprehension, at least semi-consistently across the different kinds of texts that are on the test. And then finally, to get to proficient or advanced, you've got to be able to do really good inferential comprehension, explicit and implicit. And then obviously to get to advanced, you have to also be able to do evaluation, and you have to be able to use sort of cognitive strategies as well. So again, think about those skill ropes, different sizes, skinny to thicker, and what we want our children to be able to do by the time they finish third grade and beyond. Okay, next slide. So far, I've shared a lot of theory. I hopefully have told a good story. But where are the data? Where are the receipts to show that this actually works? And so next slide, I am bringing to you data or insights from two groups of children. These are both federal studies of statistically representative American children. The first study tracked about 22,000 children from kindergarten to eighth grade. These children started kindergarten in fall 1998 and finished third grade in spring of 2002. So these are older data. But what's also important is these data predated the rise of cell phones and social media. We often wonder about the impact of those sorts of resources on kids' learning. These weren't part of the equation yet. So these data have some merit, even though they're over 20 years old. And then we have more recent data, and this is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This is the long-term trend version that focuses on 9 and 13-year-olds reading and math. We're going to look at data just for 9-year-olds from 2004 all the way up to last year, 2025. Okay, next slide. So what you can see on this first screen is we're looking at that group of 22,000 children. They're moving from kindergarten through third grade. So this is fall of 1998 to spring of 2002. We've got two types of constrained skills here. On the left is letter sound correspondence at the end of words. Think about that as early decoding skills. And on the right, we've got sight words, right? Remember I said we have to learn about 200 to 300 sight words because not all the words in English follow the phonics rules. What I've done is organize the data by socioeconomic status. So the rows are from the very bottom are kids in the bottom quintile, and then the top row are kids in the top quintile. So bottom socioeconomic status households to the top. And the colored dots go from kindergarten through third grade. So the light blue dots are fall of kindergarten. The purple dots or dark blue are spring of kindergarten. The orange dots are spring of first grade, and those green dots at the end are the spring of third grade. And what you can see is there are disparities in both those sort of early decoding skills on the left and sight words in the chart on the right. But eventually, by the end of third grade, those gaps almost entirely close. And I can tell you, looking at fifth and eighth grade, those gaps are completely gone by fifth grade. By contrast, next slide, we're now going to contrast that with an example of an unconstrained skill. These are the same children that we just saw master those constrained skills. But now we're looking at beginning reading comprehension. Remember, I just talked about that. That's sort of that literal on the line reading. And what we can see is there are small early gaps when children start school, and then those gaps grow. By spring of first grade, they're much wider, and they start to narrow in by third grade, but they haven't entirely closed yet. Next slide. This next slide on the right is that explicit inference, right, that we talked about. This is you have to be able to get to this level consistently to be able to get to proficient on the Missouri MAP test. And what we can see here is starting in spring of kindergarten, which are sort of that purple line. Hardly any children are able to do this level of reading comprehension. That makes sense. But by spring of first grade, in the orange dots, you can see there's a disparity. There's a gap between kids in the bottom quintile and the top. And then by third grade, the green dots, that gap is just widened. Okay, next slide. So you might be thinking, okay, Monroe, these data are 20 years old. What do more recent data look like? And that's what we're going to see in the next slide. So this is the long-term trend version of the NAEP test. This is the one that focuses on 9 and 13-year-olds. And we're looking at 9-year-olds reading achievement. These are scale scores from 2004 to 2025. We've all seen charts like this. This is why all of us are on webinars like this and in this business, really trying to change the trajectory of charts like this. The nice thing about this version of the NAEP tests, in contrast with the main NAEP that we're used to seeing, is that it breaks skills out by skill level. And so we're able to compare skills that are more or less constrained, and that's what we're going to see on the next chart. Next chart, Mara. So here what I've done is show you those data for the same time period. But on the left, we're looking at beginning reading comprehension level. Remember, I said this is like the skinniest skill rope when it comes to reading comprehension. If you're at this level, you're not going to be able to be at proficient on the Missouri MAP test, sorry. But then on the right is explicit inferential comprehension. And what you can see is huge disparities. Roughly 90% or higher of all kids have been at that beginning reading comprehension level for most of the last 20 years. But it's once we get to that next level of comprehension, the explicit inferential comprehension, that's where things start to fall apart. Next slide. So we talked earlier about constrained and unconstrained skills, constrained skills being learned mainly in classroom settings, unconstrained skills learned inside and outside of school. Researchers who've looked at how children spend their time have really given us information to really understand that what we have in front of us is what I would call a 90-hour week challenge. We all have the same 168 hours a week. So that's constrained. But if we look at how school-age children spend their time, what we find is on average, they're going to spend about 75 hours a week eating and sleeping. Those are really, really important hours, but let's set those aside for the moment and say they're not available for active learning. That leaves us with, on average, across an entire year, about 30 hours a week in school. That's, of course, more during the school year, less during the summer, like right now, but on average, about 30 hours a week, which leaves about 60 hours a week for everything else. and that everything else is really that time for informal learning. That's really important. But as we all know, children have different opportunities and experience in the informal learning time. And that really makes an impact. Next slide. So again, I just want to bring up again, these are the unconstrained skills where children have the opportunity to learn and develop and practice these skills in these informal learning settings. Next slide. And one set of skills I particularly want to highlight is the executive function skills. When it comes to reading, we're used to talking about background knowledge and talking about language skills and comprehension. But an area where we don't talk as much about is executive function skills, which are so important. Again, remember, these are the air traffic control skills that are helping to like manage so many of the other skills in our brains. And they play a really particular important role for children that are taking the MAP tests every spring. If you look at what the MAP says children need to do, it's not just comprehension, and it's not just vocabulary, it's not just background knowledge. They have to be able to use strategies, right, to make meaning and make sense of what they're reading. And the strategies that are described map directly onto executive function. If we have more time, I'd show you some charts that also show differences in executive function skills. You just have to take my word for it that the same kinds of gaps that I've shown you today on these unconstrained skills are what we also see on executive function skills that are also unconstrained. Next slide. So here's the good news. When I look across researchers and think tanks and centers that have been writing for years about executive skills in particular, there are 12 categories of research or evidence-based activities that they identify as being able to help build these kind of skills. And the thing I want to highlight is that these activities, they're social, they're interactive, they involve not just thinking, but also emotion. These are all the types of activities that informal learning organizations and programs excel at. And I'm excited to have colleagues from the Magic House and Nelson Atkins Museum here today to talk about the kinds of things that they do with and for children in their programs. Next slide. So essentially, we have a 90-hour-a-week challenge. We can't solve this only looking at 30-hour-a-week school-only solutions. The solutions really require bringing formal and informal learning working together. For kids who need extra help with constrained skills, they obviously need to get the intervention and tutoring. But these other kinds of activities and other kinds of programs, the types of organizations that you see on the screen, also play a critical role in helping build the unconstrained skills that are quietly driving success in school and, unfortunately, the achievement gap. Thanks for the opportunity to share. I'm looking forward to hearing from our colleagues and answering any questions that you might have.
Monroe, thank you so much. I think we'll take the next few minutes. If anybody has questions, to please put them in the Q&A. I'm going to ask the start with a question I don't know. I'm going to just shoot this out to you, Monroe. Phones, iPhones. I see more and more use of those this summer. Then I see few kids going to summer camp programs. Um, where does phones fit in this informal learning environment? And please, everybody else, put your questions in the Q&A and I'll ask Monroe.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing I want to highlight, and this is where I think is an advantage of the sort of longitudinal data I show you, the gaps between constrained and unconstrained skills like predate this sort of thing, right? The iPhone.
Mm,
So this is not something that, has been caused by the rise of phones. But what I will say is that we know there is a big difference between sort of passive engagement and active engagement, right? So the kinds of engagement you get from play, the kind of social activities, those are the kinds of activities that are wiring and rewiring the neural connections in your brain, which are really sort of the biological basis of skills, right? And so um, I would say like the thing that I would highly emphasize, particularly around what we know around skill building, is the more interactive, the more social, the more emotionally engaged, the more cognitively engaged the activity, the better it is for skill building.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Monroe. Um, if anybody asks questions throughout this webinar, and we can't get to the answering them, Monroe or other guests will make sure to answer them, and because we'll be sending out all this material after the webinar. Absolutely brilliant, Monroe. And I think what's going on right now is all of our attendees are really thinking about all of that information that you just gave us. And I know most of everyone is having a big aha moment, similar to what Kristen and I have experienced from learning from you. So thank you. I'll let Kristen go on to one of our great informal learning institutes.
Wonderful. Thank you. And yes, thank you so much, Monroe. We are delighted to have Christy Makar of the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art with us today. As the manager of school partnerships, Christy promotes awareness of the museum's programs and resources for schools, including professional development opportunities, school tours, studio workshops, curriculum consultation, and access to the museum's Educational Resource Center. She manages and facilitates student visits through the incentive grant program, which enables eligible schools to receive studio workshops and transportation stipends. Today, Christy will specifically be sharing the museum's Thinking Through Art program. Thank you for being here today, Christy.
Thank you for including me and highlighting some of the work that we do here at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the museum, we are located here in the heart of Kansas City. We have over 40,000 works of art in our collection, spanning 5,000 years of history. As you mentioned, we have several resources, but today I'm going to provide a very short overview of our Thinking Through Art program. Next slide, please. So we started Thinking Through Art as a pilot program back in 2012 with just one school. Last year, we were in 49 different classrooms across Kansas City, focusing on grades 3 through 5. We're in 10 schools across the metro area. And as we said, 9 of the 10 are school-wide Title I schools that we work with. And last year, we touched 1,261 students with this program. When there's 3 main components of this program. The first one is that we have docents go out to visit the museum 10 times over the course of the school year. The other part is that it's very important that students come to the museum. You can see the pictures here on the side. So as you can see, we have one of our docents in the classroom. Then we have our teaching artists work with the kids. They go into the museum galleries, and then they also make something. And then the final thing is that we bring families into the museum for something called Family Field Trip Night. Next slide, please. So the VTS discussion. So there's a lot of things about VTS that we're not going to be able to get into today, and I would direct you to their website. But just to give you a little overview of this, we select 10 images from our each grade level has 10 different works of art that they talk about when they come to the museum. And the great thing is there's no right or wrong answers when it comes to talking about art. This model, when they go and talk, there's really shifts away from that content. And it allows students to hold multiple perspectives on different works of art, and that they get to see that their classmates might have different experiences and look at the world a little bit differently. And they can kind of hold different multiple perspectives, and it really also builds empathy. Next slide, please. So as I said, the first 15 minutes are spent having a VTS discussion. The docents lead this, but again, it is very student driven. The second part is each student receives a writing booklet. You can see the different covers there that I have included on the slide. And this is actually an example. This is the very first lesson from a 3rd grade classroom. You can see that so you can see the small image on the bottom there is the work of art that was talked about. And then we kind of turn it over to the classroom teacher with docent support. And I love looking at this. This is the very first lesson of the 10 visits. And it's always going back to the evidence, which is very important in VTS. I know that Monroe was talking about literacy. We are really kind of working on the visual literacy front here. I see, like you can see, I might see laughing because I see that they are smiling. So again, it's very evidence-based. We try very hard to go along with every grade level's English language arts curriculum. Its main ideas, supporting details, exploring setting and character. And you can see there's dialogue. So each writing lesson will be different as the year goes along. Next slide, please. So as important as the visits in the classroom are, it's always great to have the students come and visit with their classroom. I mentioned that they get to see at least one of the works of art that they've talked about in their classroom when they come into the museum. And also, it's very great that the docents have built this amazing relationship with the students. And so then when they come into the museum, there's that little aha moment of bringing them together, which is always fantastic to see. And I know that Kristen mentioned earlier, so we do have an incentive grant program here at the museum. All of our schools, the workshops are underwritten. And then for our school-wide Title I schools, we also send a stipend to help with all trip-related expenses. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the last pillar of our program is Family Field Trip Night. We brought this on board in 2016. We have had over 12,000 students and their families participate since it began. One of the wonderful things about this is all the docents that are involved in our Thinking Through Art program are stationed throughout the museum that night, because at the core of our mission is that we want students to feel comfortable at the museum, and we want families to know that talking about art and creating art together is a very worthwhile activity. But here in some of the pictures, you can see some of the docents, they'll have material boards or questions. You can see kids and families making things together. So this is really actually my favorite night of the museum, and there's quite an energy involved in this. Okay, next slide, please. I just kind of wanted to, and I know that we don't have a lot of time today, but I kind of just wanted to go over like the core mission part, the values that we believe in here. At the museum, we want to be a trusted partner, and in all of our programs, we really believe in student-centered learning, where that sticky learning really happens. And again, we want people to feel like they belong and are welcomed. And of course, we're an art museum, so we want to spark curiosity and joy with art as well. And then we want to build that relationship with our teachers too. We want this Thinking Through Art program to be a tool and really supports them and build on their social emotional learning and culture responsive teaching practice. And then, of course, we also have so many other programs at the museum. It's great that they can kind of learn what we have to offer and support them in their work, because we know teachers, God bless teachers. We just appreciate everything that teachers do. And students along the way, it really helps them build confidence, especially when they know that there's not a right answer. They're comfortable sharing their ideas. We want them, it really kind of works on those critical thinking skills. And also just to let them know that what they have to say matters, and that they are their own community of learners. And it kind of just, it bolsters that confidence. Next slide, please. I have this, and I'm not sure, I would hope that they're maybe going to share this slide deck with you. That QR code on there is actually, you can sign up. My colleague does a newsletter specifically for educators that will give you some more information. And then I left my email address on there as well if you have any questions. So again, thank you very much, and I appreciate the time to talk with you about it. Thank you.
Phenomenal, Christy. Absolutely phenomenal. I guess we all know what we're going to be doing next time we come to Kansas City, over on this side of the state. If you have any questions, like I said, please put them in the Q&A. We will be getting the slide deck out to everyone, and all of the videos and everything that you see here. I am really honored today, this morning, you can still believe it's morning, to introduce Beth Fitzgerald, the president, and Emily Norton, director of education programs with the Magic House, St. Louis Children's Museum. The Magic House opened to the public in 1979. Sorry, Beth. It's a phenomenal, and it's had a strong partnership with schools in the region for 46 years. Their founders saw this strong partnership as the key reason for creating a children's museum here in St. Louis. So I'm honored and pleased to have both Beth and Emily share with us about the Magic House.
Good morning. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Magic House, we're located in Kirkwood, Missouri. We have a second location in the city of St. Louis called Made for Kids. And our mission, if you want to switch slides, is really all about hands-on learning. That's what our founders felt was really important for children to be engaged in their own learning. So we look at imagination, curiosity, creativity, problem-solving skills in all of our exhibits and programs. And I wanted to take a moment for you to think back to the time that you were in early elementary school. And most of the time, people just remember those days as kind of a blur, except for the day you went on a field trip. And I bet all of you can remember pretty distinctly where you went and what you did on those 1 or 2 days a year. So we take our role very seriously here, that we know that when a child is visiting us or we're visiting their classroom, that we are going to have a lifelong impact. Lisa, at the beginning of this, before we got started, was just sharing about her early memories of visiting the Magic House. And we hear that over and over again of just how meaningful those experiences are when children are visiting us. Next slide. So all of our exhibits programs start with our mission, but we are also guided by an education advisory committee that is made up of leaders in the education field throughout the region. So we have representatives from universities, school superintendents. We have a representative from the St. Louis School Nurses Association, lots of different perspectives in formal and informal learning. We have St. Louis ARC is represented on the committee, the YMCA, the YWCA. So we want to make sure that we are staying relevant and that we're meeting the needs of the community. And so that's been at the heart of the Magic House and making sure that we continue to evolve. Next slide, please. So one of the things that the Education Advisory Committee has guided us on over the last 10 years, I would say, is the importance of us providing STEM learning that can support the more classroom-based experiences that may not be able to be as hands-on as we can provide. We are lucky that we have special space that's just designed for hands-on learning. And we know when teachers are, involved with day-to-day learning, it's sometimes hard for them to provide those hands-on experiences that really do bring learning together for children. So we have STEM, we've done new programming around and exhibits around early literacy, most recently character education. And our Education Advisory Committee met about a year ago to help us with our new strategic plan. And what they really wanted us to focus, and it goes back to Lisa's comment about phones, is that they felt we really need to start showing children how to play together, that children are coming to school now, really not being able to collaborate, looking at those executive functioning skills that Monroe was talking about and integrating those into our exhibits and programs. Next slide, please. So our exhibit development begins with the Reggio Emilia belief that physical space shapes how children explore, think, learn, and collaborate. So that really the environment is a teacher. We design and create our own exhibits. We start with state and national learning standards so that we know before we even begin creating an exhibit that it's going to meet the needs of the teachers and the students, and be able to really support the learning that's happening in classrooms across our region. We try to look at how we can bring to life what children will be learning about or reading about so they have the background knowledge to understand the concepts and vocabulary that will be introduced in their classrooms. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share a little bit about WonderWorks, which is our early childhood STEM gallery. So we looked at the Missouri Early Learning and kindergarten STEM standards, and then we created hands-on experiences that it supported those standards. For example, Simple Machines is an important STEM area of learning for kindergarten in the state of Missouri. And so we wanted to give children, even before they entered kindergarten, the opportunity to work with Simple Machines. We also have parenting prompts on the wall to share vocabulary with children because sometimes parents may not even remember what Simple Machines are, and they need a little bit of support as well. Next slide, please. So this is kind of some visual images. The slide on the right shows our Simple Machine ship, where children are not just seeing a Simple Machine on display. They're actually using levers and ramps and wheels and axles and all of those different Simple Machine tools. You can see we have a flag where they get to use a pulley. So we want to make it very real, very authentic for them. And we have a link to a child-led tour that we're going to share with you if that works. We'll see what happens. If not, we can go on.
And we're gonna play it WonderWorks. We're gonna learn about the power of air. The power. Wow! This is how balls float in air because the current is pushing them up. It's the little hearts, the little sponges. This one's a little paper. Then this is where, if you face it up here, those, I'm gonna make them blue. Yeah! There's this where, this is the tube where air comes out, and this is where it spins. This is the Simple Machines Tower. It's where we look at Simple Machines. Then there's this race track where you make this car. Then you're gonna see which one goes the fastest. That one goes pretty fast. Woo! Probably go really
So we can
fast.
probably stop it here. I just wanted to give you more of a visual look of what the space is like and the kinds of experiences that we're providing children. And so at this point, after sharing a little bit about our exhibit development, I'm going to pass it on to Emily Norton, who's going to share information about the programs that we provide.
Great. Thank you, Beth. So we offer a variety of educational programs at the Magic House. I could probably spend a whole hour talking about those, but we are going to highlight just some of our opportunities. So if you switch to the next slide, we have a Book Smart program, and SMART stands for Science, Math, Art, together. And it's an early childhood program that we have that is fully grant funded. We actually started it during COVID, so the first year was virtual, which was a learning experience, but has had really positive responses. And what it is we partner with our local school district. So every year, I think since the first year, we've had 50 classrooms from St. Louis Public Schools, which is our city district, but we've added on more throughout the years. So if you're familiar with St. Louis, we now have worked with Ferguson Florissant, University City, and also the Normandy School District. But with this program, again, it's grant funded, so we are able to go visit those communities. We've come with 3 outreach programs. So each classroom has one of our museum educators join 3 times throughout the school year, where we bring a story, so an interactive story time, but then also a hands-on art project that blends math and science components. So it's where stories become experiences. We're not just going to read, but we are engaging those students with through play and learning too. We also have, so they have the 3 visits, and then they also have a field trip to the Magic House. So those students are able to come visit the Magic House, experience that. They will visit either our Wonderworks, which Beth just highlighted, exhibit, or our other early childhood exhibit, which is Storytime Magic. And then we also provide professional developments within that grant for those teachers and school family nights. So that is where we just invite the schools in the evenings to come explore and experience the museums outside of the public with that. So BookSmart really is a great program, and it invites early learners to ask questions, experiment with materials, express their creativity, build language through conversation. There's a lot of conversation with our educators and with each other and their teachers, and just explore those concepts in multiple ways. Next slide. Field trips. So one of our foundational programs at the Magic House is our field trips. We offer guided field trips, which means they are facilitated by our museum educators and museum teachers, and there also is a program component. So there is always some sort of component that goes along with it. In developing our field trips, we do align them to the Missouri Early Learning Standards or grade level expectations or other standards. And they all include those hands-on inquiry-based experiences, right? We're trying to connect what they could be learning in a classroom, but to authentic exploration, discovery, and wonder. And it really helps build the background knowledge and vocabulary that supports reading comprehension and conversation. Next slide. So we offer multiple field trips throughout different exhibit spaces, but one I did want to talk about is our STEAM design challenges. So this is located in our STEAM exhibit area. It has a science lab, art studio, makers workshop, and a tech play area. And when students visit this, they are able to engage in the engineering design process. So that's something you can learn about, in a book or in a classroom, but unless you're engaging in it, it's really hard to put that and understand what you're doing. So when they come, each grade level has a specific challenge designed around their standards, around their curriculum. And we put kids in groups and they're able to work through that engineering design process. So our process goes along the lines of inspire, plan, build, test, redesign, and reflect. And really, it's such an important program because it really gets kids to have to talk to each other, work through, persevere. I feel like that's one of the big things we see a lot of when they don't get it right the first time. That's a struggle, and is really giving them that experience to learn through that. I remember one time I've done hundreds of design challenges with students, and this was years ago. But a kid told me fail because so many of them are like, it doesn't work. And he said, fail means first attempt in learning. And I really loved that because it's true. You have to really persevere, work through these things to get through that. And so ultimately, with all of our program, we really are trying to just encourage and be intentional about the learning, the programming, and hands-on exploration and playing through learn. Next slide. And so that brings us, I don't want to take up too much time, to our last page. There is our website. So if you would like to kind of check out and see what other programs and exhibits and offerings we have, you can reach out to Beth or I with any questions you may have. And we want to say thank you for including the Magic House. It was a great invitation and we enjoy being here today.
Kristen, aren't you excited about what we have in Missouri?
It's amazing, and now I have to get over to St. Louis again to find my new favorite place.
Yes, we'll have to flip.
And we have been very fortunate to hear from the Nelson Atkins Museum and the Magic House today, and we know there are many other amazing informal learning spaces across the state of Missouri. So please now take a moment to use the Q&A to share your favorite Missouri informal learning environment with all of us. That broadens our awareness. It brings more support to these beneficial institutions and organizations. Please include the name and the city and any information you think would be helpful. And also note that this list will be sent out to everyone, so don't feel stressed about scanning through this valuable information so quickly. We will make sure you all get these great recommendations.
All right, I'm just going to shout out one really big one here because I see somebody. Our public libraries need our greatest support, and wow, have they changed over since I was a young kid, and all the exploration that can happen in our public libraries across the state of Missouri. From story times all the way to STEM activities. I'm proud of the public libraries in Missouri. Okay. Well, we have just, um, ah, we're finally getting the chat going. Remake Learning Days hosted in Kansas City by KC STEAM Alliance, and the Remake Learning movement is across the country. So make it in your city too. We'll have to send out more information about that. All righty. Well, this webinar is in part of many webinars happening this week for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Um, uh, sorry, here. Okay. So there are many, many national webinars going on this week too, and I'm sure many of you are signed up for. I just wanted to shout out four of them. Um, in half an hour, uh, Central Time, national webinar on turning data in action, advancing state policy for Alice. We also have, which means asset limited, income constrained employed families. I will put in the chat the how you can register for these webinars. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock Central Time, State Chiefs Leading, Elevating Learning and Literacy Outcomes. This is at the state level. July 30th is A Tale of Two States, Reducing Chronic Absenteeism. And then Friday, we are going to be reflecting back and looking ahead the changing role in education. Or I'm sorry, Thursday, later on Thursday. So many exciting things coming on. And you will get a link to this also. Next slide. Kristen, we'll call this out. It is 10:59. Would you like to
Remarkable.
say any closing words?
Oh, I'm just so appreciative to everyone who's been here, to our speakers in particular, who had so much to share and managed to fit it into this short time span. Thank you all for being here, and we look forward to sharing all of these resources with you soon.
Thank you.